I view all real estate as an investment, even the home that one lives in.
Yes.
It's like planting money and watering, and sometimes there's drought and sometimes there's not. But if you take care of it and love it, then it'll bud. Hey, Hannah Allen with 12 Rivers Realty.
Hello, SALMA MANZUR.
I'm excited to be here and talk investments with you.
I would not want to talk investments with anybody else.
You're so sweet. Thanks. I mean, the most recent investment that I've done is the duplex that I bought last summer, and I rehabilitated the entire thing from the floor to the sheetrock. I mean, a lot of things came up that were unexpected that I didn't think I was going to do, that I ended up having to learn and do, and that was a huge learning curve.
Yeah.
But it was worth it because now I know.
To someone who's wanting to get into investment, let's just take that situation, as an example. A duplex that they maybe want to live in one side, rent out the other, but it needs full construction. If you have no previous experience doing a flip or doing, any kind of a construction experience, like, how do you walk your clients through that process? Like, you'll jump into something, I won't.
Right.
I don't do, like, my tolerance for risk is very low, unlike a lot of investors, especially. So if you had a client that wanted to do that, how would you walk them through it?
I mean, you have to go through the spreadsheets of the numbers and do everything even before you buy it, as you know, as you really know. But also, Austin is such an affluent city, and I have been doing this for so long that you know areas and you know numbers. So it's a matter of putting it together to show the client, what they're getting. And most of the clients that are wanting to do in it have an idea, or at least are interested in it. Like, I'm not having to convince anyone, but it's based on the numbers. And their threshold, and it's based on a lot of information, obviously, how long they're going to hold it and what their intention is or what their goal is with it. But
what about just on the construction side?
Okay,
like, how do you even know where to start if you've never flipped a home and you have to do a gut remodel? Like,
I mean, if I know that going into a situation, then I'm going to look for something for a client where they're going to probably hire a contractor to semi-do most of the work so that they're not so overwhelmed, because you don't want people to fail.
Yeah.
And also depending on the threshold, right? So if a client approaches me and says, I want to have this return, then the cost is going to be eaten up by certain things. And then you manage that with their risk factor, with their knowledge, and how much they're willing to do to save, and where you can cut those costs. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But what about you?
Investment. Well, so part of the reason why this podcast, whatever you want to call it, was so exciting to me was because you were one of the people that encouraged me to even start investing. And before I bought my first home, you were I remember this conversation. You probably don't even remember this conversation, but I remember you saying, like, you just got to go for it. You just have to jump in. And that was at a time in the market where interest rates were at an all-time low. I really didn't have a lot to lose, and so those have the homes that I've purchased have certainly been my, most treasured assets. But I don't know. I mean, it's just exciting. Each investment has its own personality, I feel.
Right.
So each one is exciting in its own way.
I'm curious, do you gamble? Do you like to go to Vegas?
I like to gamble with other people's money.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Because I just think as real estate, as, a little bit of a Vegas, I don't gamble. Like, I'm the same as you. I just accidentally hit this. I'm the same as you. Like, if I go to Vegas and I'm with friends, but
maybe a little here and there.
Right. But if I'm going to gamble, like, let's say I'm going to set $1,000 aside to gamble, then it's just as me going to an amusement park and enjoying myself and blowing that money on the rides. And, that's how I visualize it, right? Real estate to me is kind of gambling, but with less risk and more knowledge, especially with experience,
but that's the key for us, right? we know enough so that it doesn't feel like a risk, where
Correct.
I'm sure people outside of the industry don't feel that way.
Correct.
And I'm sure there's also people that are way too confident and
Right.
and think they know.
And I mean, I view all real estate as an investment, even the home that
Same.
one lives in.
Yes.
It's like planting money and watering, and sometimes there's drought and sometimes there's not. But if you take care of it and love it, then it'll bud, right? And more times than not, it'll bud a lot. Like, we're not talking about like a fig tree in Texas that you're not going to get fruit in. We're talking about like, I don't know, what's something that grows a lot? Bluebonnets. You know what I mean? So it's less of a risk, right?
No return.
Than analogy.
You talk about when we talk about tolerance for risk, or like
Right.
I can't even fathom buying a home in much less another state, like it's another city, much less another state, where like I've never been, I've never visited that place.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't do that. Maybe I'll be there one day.
Right.
But I like to be within a short drive of my investments.
But I thought that too, Hannah. And the other day, I accidentally texted this guy, Cody, who I thought was my tenant. He was my tenant, but not the current tenant. And his response was like, "Hey, I'm in New Mexico now. Wrong Cody." And I was like, "Hey, Cody, how are you? Whatever." And he's like, "Just life here is so much cheaper in New Mexico." And some of my friends have started going to New Mexico for mountain biking and stuff. And I thought, you know what? Like, why wouldn't I buy, like, just like I would buy a little house here on the east side that I can turn around and rent, an Airbnb?
Yeah.
Like, why don't I go and explore a little town in New Mexico where the weather is cooler at nights and people might migrate for vacations now, but later for longer term?
I think it would be different if it was something that was a short-term rental that you would enjoy visiting, right? And you could utilize. But wrapping my head around a single family home, I don't want to call any specific cities out that I may never invest in.
Right.
But there's plenty of places here in the United States, right, that you can invest.
Alabama,
that I would never want to.
Arkansas,
Yeah, I would never
like,
want to visit.
I know, but that's where my mentality is changing
But
as an investor.
I mean, that might be where the money is.
Right. I have women investors who are investing in Alabama and New Orleans, in small cities with big universities like Austin was back in the day. And you're saving on the income of, on the taxes of your income with these investment properties, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's how we're building the wealth. But I have a question for you, actually. Like, when you're looking for an investment property, what are the things that you're looking for?
So just like you, that's evolved over time. My very first home, I think the goal was just to buy something that wasn't going to need a ton of work. Like, I wasn't willing to dive in, head first into something that needed construction. I wanted it to be pretty turnkey. I wanted it to be in an area that could justify a long-term or a short-term tenant if I wanted to furnish it.
Right.
A short drive or walkability to something, whether it be a restaurant or a coffee shop or, retail of some sort. And I think most importantly, an area that is safe.
Yeah.
And that is very subjective. But I wanted it to be somewhere that, if a single person lived there, they would feel safe.
Right.
Whether that ended up being me as a single person or a tenant as a single person.
Right.
So that was kind of the criteria. The first house doesn't have a huge backyard. It only has one bathroom. So like those two things right there, like kick it out of, a lot of people's searches. But I still think in the long run, it'll end up being a great investment. Right. I'm very confident in that.
Real estate. Yeah. I have changed I always have, I would absolutely live in it. So like right now, if I have a few little real estate and I get scared about something or something falls apart, like I can move into a house that I need to work into and, make money on where I'm living.
Yeah.
Not ideal, but it's like, I just wanted to know that I could hack things, you know, even though I'm older and it's not convenient and it's not something I would rather do. Right. I want to know that I'm able to, right? Yeah. So I would move into any of the homes that I own. I can now that I don't have an HOA, that's why I also moved out of that place. I can Airbnb any of the homes that I have, and any of the homes that I have are also going to rent pretty well. They're all, I'm lucky having been in Austin, in central Austin. Is where my stuff is. But again, I'm changing the mentality a little bit. Now that I have a nest egg of things, I can take more risk. And also, I feel like as realtors in the business, like we do have the luxury of being able to go to another city because we have like the vacation time or not the vacation time, depending on how you look at it. But it's also work. So I've changed my mentality a little bit, but I haven't done it either.
It's interesting because I have some friends in Dallas who have huge real estate portfolios and have accumulated, I mean, almost 100 homes in a very short amount of time, because there's certain parts of Dallas that are still quote unquote affordable. You know, the prices in which they're buying these homes, you couldn't even buy a condo here in Austin for these prices. And of course, these are homes that are pretty dilapidated. They need, you know, full gut remodels, and they do that. But you can't even do that here. Like, you can't even do that in the suburbs here. Not unless you're an hour away from central Austin. So, again, when you're talking about investing in other areas, I mean, you could do that. But we're not.
I know. Well, and my next big dream is to buy a small commercial space.
Yeah.
But it's scary. That's a lot of money, and you know, but it's going to happen in my lifetime. There's no doubt about it. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you have experienced that are those fears that people have that you have now overcome, and they're less fearful because you're living them and they weren't?
Man, having bad tenants, right? That's every landlord's nightmare. And every person that owns investment properties has probably experienced that at one time or another. I got so lucky with my very first tenant. She was a dream tenant. I mean, she paid rent on time every month. It was auto drafted out of her account. I never heard from her. If I did, it was because she was like improving the property in some way. She was always nice, respectful. She kept the house so clean. I mean, like literally a dream tenant. And then my next tenant was the total opposite. Late on rent, destroyed parts of the home. When they moved out, which they didn't just move out, I had to kick them out. I mean, it was on the, you know, tail of of an eviction, or it would have been an eviction. So, I mean, yeah, no one wants to deal with that. It's a headache. It's money. It's frustration. But now, having been through that, I know what to look for and what not to do the next time. Right now, I have an amazing tenant. But yeah, no one wants to go through that. And it could have actually been a lot worse. I've heard about tenants, you know, squatting and,
I know,
you know, changing the locks and doing all sorts of weird stuff. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. People have all this fear about it. And I think I had all these fears about it, but I'm like, nothing happens all at once. So you can handle the things that come. And the return, I mean, it's everything. Even me, who, like, I'm just a spender. So I realized that, like, my little bungalow in Hyde Park, like, been paying it. Like, if I wasn't paying a mortgage that I had to pay, like, it would go to travel. It would go to money well spent, maybe, but it wouldn't be for my retirement. So I just have to, like,
your future.
So anyways, I'm glad I'm doing it. I'm glad I fell into it. You know?
Well, you didn't just fall into it.
Well, but I mean, like, I could have picked a different career. Like, I could have been a nurse, and I would have been a great nurse, or I could have been a teacher. I'm kind of glad I fell into something that I learned that really benefits, you know, that I have control over, that I feel, you know, benefits. Same. Well, Hannah, this was really fun, and we should take this to maybe a happy hour or lunch and continue our investment talk.
Let's do it.
Maybe we can invite some other possible investors out there.
Yes. Let's go.
Okay.